Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Long-time lurker, gonna post some of the paranormal experiences from my childhood. Some setup. 2009-ish. Live in an old duplex with mom, her GF, Kim, and her GF's daughter, Talia. House was built in like 1947 or something. Friends with the neighbors, single mom with 2 sons around my age. When we move in, there are small pouches of scented herbs hanging from all the windows. Mom tells me not to move them, but eventually take down the ones in my room anyway because I didn't like them. Find pennies in almost every corner of the house. Just 4 pennies, all heads up and arranged in a square in every reachable corner of all the rooms. Again, mom tells me not to touch them, but pretty quickly picks up the ones in my room, not understanding why they were there. House had a crazy overgrown backyard. It was tiny, maybe only 30 by 15 feet, and had tons of colorful plants that were wildly untended. Non-adjoined neighbor had a huge wooden privacy fence that made the yard seem even smaller and let plants grow vertically along it. A steep spiral staircase in the middle of the second floor hallway led up to a split attic. One side had mom's exercise equipment while the other had some junk for us kids, boxes of toys and old video games, stuff like that. Second floor was just bedrooms and a bathroom. Master bedroom looked down the hallway where the first door on the left was Talia's room, then the door to the spiral staircase, then my room, and finally the bathroom faced back at the master bedroom. Alright, so starting chronologically. Mom and Kim are moving stuff in, getting things ready in their bedroom. Pets are over there as this was going to be their first night staying in the house. Kim has a big fluffy white cat with black spots that was spending a lot of time in the room with them because he liked to just watch people when they did chores. Cat gets bored and begins exploring. They stop unpacking and take a break, sitting on the bed talking about where to put things. Both watch the cat meander down the hallway as cats do. He walks into my room and within a couple seconds he comes flying back out of the room, smacking hard into the wall and hauling ass down the hallway and downstairs. When I say flew, I mean flew. He didn't just run quickly and lose his footing. Came out of the room at about waist height and slammed sideways into the wall, like someone had tossed him out of the room. Both skeeved out but continue unpacking and end up staying in the house that night. Kim complains about the smell of onions all night when they wake up in the morning. Said the whole upstairs hallway smelled like a man after a full day of work. Next few days pass uneventfully aside from the occasional creepy feeling. They move us kids in, cue me messing with the herb pouches and pennies. Now Talia's room and mine were actually connected by an archway at the back of the rooms. At first Talia and I were just sleeping on mattresses on the floor. We were pretty poor at the time. Mom and Kim wake up to the sound of someone walking with heavy footsteps through the house one night. They see me sleepwalk out of Talia's room, down the hallway, into my room, and then a few moments later back out of Talia's room. They can't wake me up and both are pretty small women and I'm in the middle of male puberty, so they couldn't stop me either. Had to wait in front of my mattress for me to walk by and both just pushed me over into bed. Had to do this a couple times before we put my dresser in front of the archway and hung a curtain for privacy. I had never been known to sleepwalk and haven't done it since. My experiences in the house. We had 2 dogs, a bulldog and a beagle. The beagle was my shadow and I loved her more than anything. She goes to bed with me every night, usually sleeping at the foot of the bed. Wake up periodically to her growing at the corner of the room with her hackles raised. Still laying down in bed but clearly agitated by something. Corner she's staring at is right behind the door if it were open, closest corner in the room to the attic staircase. I can't ever see anything in the corner, it's too dark, but I reach down and pat her to try and calm her and myself down. She looks back at me, eyes wide, licking her chops, and when she looks back at the corner she kind of just glances around the room like she lost whatever she was looking at and settles back down. This is a weekly occurrence over our 2 years of living there. I would sometimes wake up from naps or in the middle of the night to the sound of my name being whispered really loudly, like a stage whisper. Didn't sound like my mom or anyone in the house, voice was usually masculine, and the oldest guy in the building was only a couple years older than me. Plus my bed was against the outside wall, not the one we shared with the neighbors. One night I'm up way past my bedtime playing Pokemon on my DS, pretty sure it was a school night too. I always played with the sound off, still do, but I was feeling goofy, so I took the volume slider on the side of the DS, cranked up it and back down a couple of times. So the music played for a second, stopped, played for a second, stopped, repeat. Did this once or twice before realizing blasting Pokemon music was a surefire way to get busted for staying up late. Few moments go by, I'm battling a gym leader or something. Distinctly hear the music coming and out again. Didn't touch the volume slider, finger was actually on it. forcing it to remain off. Sounded as if someone had recorded the exact sound that came from my DS and played it back to me. Shut DS and go to sleep hugging my dog. Always had a sinking feeling when climbing the steps to the attic. Would occasionally go up there to play a game or something with Talia, but had the most horrific feeling of being watched the entire time. Even being with someone else wouldn't make the feeling go away. Talia and I build a small box fort that I'm way too big for. She left something in the box fort and wants it back but is scared to go up there. I go up to grab it and find it inside a long tubular box. Feeling of dread the entire time I'm in the attic, from the moment I'm on the first step, only getting worse as I climb up and get to the attic proper. Try to reach into the box to grab her toy and arms aren't long enough. Would have to destroy the fort otherwise, so I get on my stomach and crawl through the tube. The second I get inside, the feeling amps up to 11. Still to this day have never felt this again. All the hair on my body stood on end and my eyes started watering. Snatched the toy and ripped myself out of the box, splitting it open in the process. Swear I saw something duck out of my vision as I ran out of there. One night it's just Kim and I in the house and we're watching TV in the living room when there's a loud banging coming from upstairs. She arms herself with a kitchen knife and I grab a heavy candle holder before we go upstairs to investigate. As we climb the staircase we hear another bang from above. We sweep the upstairs and find nothing before heading up to the attic. Nothing appears out of place, nothing fallen over or anything. Next day ask adjoining neighbors if they were making any loud banging noises last night. They weren't even home when we heard the banging. That's about it for my experiences in the house. Kim claimed to have seen a woman in gardening clothes in the backyard from the upstairs bathroom and ran down to see who was in the yard only for no one to be there. Also claimed to have had a hand come out of a cabinet and grab her leg while she was putting dishes away. It only let go when she screamed no at it. She said she would often smell onions, like a man's body odor. We spent one whole winter all just sleeping in the downstairs living room. We have a huge sectional couch and they would blow up an air mattress right next to it, so it was like one giant bed. I thought it was just fun, like camping but in the living room. It wasn't until much later my mom told me that both her and Kim were terrified of the house and just wanted us all together at night. She told me that the pennies and pouches were to ward off spirits. They actually had a local paranormal investigation team come out to the house and take some recordings. If I can find the website, I'll post a link, but they caught a video of what looks like just a pair of legs appearing in front of the upstairs bathroom in my room and just walking down the hall towards the staircase leading downstairs. A psychic came out and said that there was a portal directly outside my room and the upstairs bathroom that allowed spirits to come in and out freely, so take that as you will. Mom and GF are really into ghost hunting shows. Entirely possible this fueled some of their fear of their house. Decide to take the kids out to an old estate in the middle of a state park. Drive into the woods for a while until we come up to a gravel path that's been gated off. Park the car and walk up the path for about 10 minutes until we get to a clearing. Huge manor house in the center surrounded by these small cabins in a semicircle. House and most of the cabins are totally ruined, walls falling down, roofs collapsing in, etc. We walk around the house itself for a while trying to see if we can't find a way inside. It's well blocked off, boards blocking most of the windows and doors. Assume it's to keep the bums and hoodlums out. The cabins were all on one side of the house while a tall watchtower was on the other side, only about 100 feet from the barn. Watchtower and barn doors bolted shut. Talking about where to start outside the watchtower, and I lean up against the boarded up door. Hear a shuffle and panicked whispering from behind me, "They're here." Stand straight up in shock and just kinda stand there while my family discusses what to do. Keep it to myself for some reason and they all decide to check out the barn some more. Find an opening that we can crawl through to get into one of the stalls. All standing in the stall when I start to get a feeling similar to how the attic felt. They all begin climbing out of the stall. The door and wall had collapsed, but it wasn't so bad as to block us entirely. Take a step forward and it feels just as intense as the attic. All my hair is standing on end. I start to get a cold sweat and I just stop in place. Tell them I don't want to go further and because it feels like the attic. They say okay, but not before snapping a picture of me. Leave the barn and make our way over to the cabins. Most are too dangerous to try and enter or lock tight like the rest of the place. Find one that we can get into because a tree had fallen and smashed a huge hole in the wall. Inside is littered with snake skeletons. Not just a few, but hundreds. They covered every surface, from the few remaining chairs to the counters and tables strewn about. Not just dead snakes, but skeletons. There were only a few scraps of shed skin on some of them, but most of these were long dead. They didn't even smell. Not sure if that's normal, but it was creepy as hell. Mom is afraid of snakes, so we don't stay there too long. Been there for a few hours now without a whole lot of luck ghost hunting. Decide to leave, making our way down the gravel trail when we can all clearly hear what sounds like a horse clopping on the gravel behind us. When we stop to check, the sound stops as well. Starts again when we begin moving. The sound follows us down the path, and when the gate comes into view, I feel a burst of air from over my shoulder and very clearly hear a horse exhaling. I spin around, but there's nothing but the shit in my pants behind me. That's about all I've got. Sorry if it's not skinwalkers in the woods, but it's all legit paranormal activity, if you can call it that.
This is my first time posting. I have quite a few stories to share. These are events that I have experienced or stories that my mom has told me which I feel are unexplained and could be considered paranormal. First, some introduction. Lived most of my life in a town in the southwest US bordering Mexico. Both parents grew up in the opposite bordering town before marrying and coming over to the US. Earlier years growing up spent most of the time with mom. Dad was usually at work and only really saw him early morning or at night during weekdays. Mom is super into learning about mysticism, the esoteric, and other religions despite being the most devout Catholic I know. Anyway, enough of that. Mom tells me different things about her past. Be me preschool to elementary school age. Mom starts talking to me about her past, specifically childhood, once in a while. Tells me about how her and her half-sister lived with their mom and had a horrible childhood. Grandmother was in single mom. Almost never home, comes back drunk all the time, beats them, house is never clean with bugs and mice. At one point their mother leaves for several months to go live in a different state, leaving them alone at the apartment they lived in. Mom tells me about auras at some point. Says that she could see them around people when she was very young but could do it less as she got older, and not all by the age of 10. Says it looked like a white glow for everyone not more than a foot away from their silhouette. Only differences between people were that for some it was brighter and for others darker, and that the light would behave differently, sometimes being a constant straight shine, wavy, or vibrating. Later on in life thought it might have something to do with people's souls or living energy. Say she doesn't understand why she could see aura, but her theory was that it might work as a shield to protect us from certain things. Says she thinks the suffering she went through might have fractured something, which in turn allowed her see auras. Fast forward several years. Be teenager. Mom likes to watch a famous religious personality on TV. Goes to one of their gathering shows in the US. Comes back and tells me excited that she was able to see the light around that person. Fast forward a few years, come back home late afternoon with mom from groceries. I'm talking to her about this thing I learned or some kind of idea, can't remember what, but I am really into it. After a few minutes she stares at me in a weird way. I notice and ask her what's up. Says she can see the thing she refers to as aura around me. It's hard to see but is faint and quivering. I get a bit creeped out, which makes her laugh. I've never experienced what she described, but I have no reason to think that she was lying to me, simply just telling me her experience. Mom tells me her experiences with what can be called ghosts or spirits. Mom says she has been able to see and somewhat communicate with spirits for a long time but can't recall when it started. Tells me about a time she went to stay at a convent for nuns when for a few days, either a few years after or before I was born. Goes with a group of other women just to get away from daily life for a bit and pray. She says that people in that town had rumors or believed that the head nun was very powerful in terms of faith, to the point that she could levitate and that demons would try to come after her. One of the days she is staying there, everything is normal. She gets through her daily activities. Night comes and she goes to sleep with the rest of the women visiting. Wakes in the middle of the night. Has to take a piss. Looks out through window at courtyard. The place is almost pitch black if not for the moonlight and a few lamps outside. Bathroom is on the other side of the courtyard. Barely sees someone in the dark walking towards the bathroom. Figures it must be one of the other women. Decides to go and walks across the courtyard into the bathroom, barely awake. Goes into the bathroom, takes a piss, starts leaving. Realizes as she's leaving the bathroom that no one else was in there. Gets spooked. Doesn't faze her and keeps walking until she makes it back to her room and goes back to sleep. Doesn't see anything strange for the rest of the visit. Mom visited by her dead father in her dreams. Be age 5. Grandfather passed away. Never really got to know him. Was never close with my mom since he didn't raise her, and spent most of his days during her childhood drinking in the streets. Everyone who knew him says he was a very calm and kind individual. One time he got in a car accident that messed his leg up pretty bad. Couldn't really walk after that, and also later got cancer. After his death, mom says she started having dreams where he comes to visit her. She says it felt almost like he was present by her bed. One time a bit after his death, she has a dream where he comes to tell her that an uncle of hers from her mom's side of the family is going to die. She then sees an image or scene of several women sitting in chairs in a row crying. Wakes up the next day worried. Several family members are getting together at her aunt's house a few days later. Her mom has 6 sisters and 2 brothers. 4 of her aunts have always lived in the same house where they grew up and is a family gathering spot to this day. She pays a visit and later on starts telling everyone about her dream and that she's worried. Her aunts are creeped out and are losing it, some saying she is just crazy or that her dad wouldn't do anything to her uncle because they got along with each other. Everyone is on edge. They change the conversation. No one brings it up again. A couple weeks later, my mom's uncle gets sick all of a sudden and has to be hospitalized. He's there for several days and doctor says he's not looking good. Mom pays the hospital a visit with her mom's family. Her mom and aunts get emotional and start crying. Goes in to try to talk to uncle but he not awake. Turns to start leaving the room and at that moment she sees the exact same thing from her dream. Her mom and aunts were the women sitting down crying in her dream. Keeps it to herself and leaves. Her uncle got better after, lived about another 15 years. A few years later is the last time mom's dad visits in her dreams. He shows up and tries to talk to her like he always did. This she lets him know that she doesn't want him to keep coming to her anymore and asks him to leave. He seemed a bit saddened by this but ended up leaving. He never visited her dreams after that. She thinks maybe he regretted not being there for her as a kid and wanted to make it up to her somehow. Another time, about 5 years ago, a different uncle dies and mom sees him in a dream too. Mom's uncle dies of some sudden random lung illness. He lived in Mexico but worked for the US Embassy. Would go to DC for training as a driver for important people. Learned how to die different kinds of maneuvers and other related things. Anyway, after his death, mom has a dream where she sees him. In the dream, her uncle says he had been tired out by his wife and daughters. Mom tells him to go rest now. He leaves and she wakes up the next day. Some people in the family, including my mom, knew about a family secret regarding that uncle of hers. He had a girlfriend when he was younger and was going to have a son with her. Dated his wife, who at the time went full on yander, threatening to self-end, and forced him to stay with her and marry her. He had 3 daughters and 1 son with his wife. The older generation in the family knew about his first son, but his wife didn't want him in the picture. Once he became an adult, he would try to reconnect with his dad, and sometimes people in the family would try to help, but his wife and daughters would throw tantrums and make him feel like shit. Saddest part was when they didn't even let his son go to his funeral. Okay, here's some strange things my mom has told me before that have nagged me for some time, especially the last. Be me. About 5 to 8 years old. Mom tells me about how I am special. She has told me this multiple times throughout my life. Yeah, there's the typical moms think all their kids are special. But when she tells me this, the way she says it is different and clearly separating me from my brother. Tells me about how I was made and born. No, not the sex talk. Says that the reason I'm special is because before I was conceived she spoke with God in her sleep and planned me out, my qualities, personality, etc. That's all she says, and it never goes anywhere else. Anyway, later I'm in elementary school and she tells me a different story I've heard about 4 times since. Be me, age 5. Random day, mom is eating at a restaurant with some friends. Having conversation and starts talking to her friends about me. Mom notices some man walk up next to her table and calls out to her. Mom asks him if he needs anything. The man says he couldn't help but overhear the conversation. Specifically the one about me. WTF. The man tells my mom that I am special and that he knows someone, another man, who would really like to meet me. Lets my mom know where to find them and leaves. Mom is a bit creeped out, think they're probably random weirdos. She doesn't go look for them and forgets about it. A few months later. Mom has a friend who is into divination. Her friend says she heard about a guy who happens to be in town at the time that does cowrie shell reading. Friend wants to go but not alone, so she invites mom. Mom doesn't buy into that stuff but decides she'll just go along with her friend but won't get the reading done. They go meet the dude at the place he does the readings. Mom describes him as a gringo hippie from the way he looked and was dressed. Probably in his 50s. Friend gets her reading done and mom just watches. After they're done, the man asks my mom if she wants a reading. Mom tells him she doesn't and they start getting ready to leave. The man out of nowhere straight up starts telling her these things that to this day she doesn't quite understand. He asks her, but more like stating, "You have a young boy about age 5, right?" My mom is a bit confused but doesn't think much of it and tells him that's right. As best as I can remember, the man then says, "Your son is very special. He is a being of fire and a very old soul that was a great teacher and has come to teach people. You must be careful in nurturing that fire and not let it go out." After that, he tells her to bring me to him when she gets the chance and that he really wants to meet me. Mom just says okay and leaves. She's really weirded out now but also intrigued. She decided not to take me and just kept it to herself. Her reasoning for that was she thought it would be really weird to take her son to a random stranger. At the time back in the early 2000s, my mom was really into that indigo and crystal child stuff, so she thought there might have been some kind of relation. She would think I was an indigo child. Don't really understand much about that myself, and she doesn't really seem into that stuff anymore.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.